Picture this. It is 1596 and a cold winter morning in the city of London. A judge, a cranky old man, frowning and fuming with anger. What is he angry at? He is upset at a 120-page document filed in his courtroom that he believes could and should have been written in just 16. What he does next is unbelievable. He summons the person who wrote it. He gets a hole cut right in the center of that document. And then he orders for that document to be hung on this person's neck and paraded across the courtroom, up and down, down and up. It has been 400 years since our judge lost his patience. And legal documents still evoke the very same emotions in people. Nobody wants to read them still. You know, I have a friend who loves to read books. He says when he sits in front of a contract, the words, they begin to fly in the air. Let me tell you another story. In 2014, several Londoners agreed to give away their oldest child in exchange for free Wi-Fi. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking they did so on purpose. And the millennials in the room, you think, well, anything for Wi-Fi. But no, let me tell you, many of these guys had just not read their contracts. In fact, unwittingly, they found themselves to be part of a research experiment where the researcher was trying to establish exactly this. You put whatever you want in the contract, they will not read. You know, something is not really funny anymore when just about everybody begins to see fun in it. Do you know the American TV show South Park? Its main character, Kyle, in the 15th season, registers onto iTunes. And to register, he does exactly what we all do. He signs up to the terms and conditions without reading. Little does he know that he has agreed to be surgically altered and to actually become an Apple product himself. Now, why do people not read their contracts? You know, this is a dark commentary on people, first on companies that would have people sign up to contracts and any kind of contracts without reading them. But also a commentary on the people themselves who are happy to sign up to contracts that they would rather not read. And why do people not read these contracts? I've asked this question innumerable number of times. And the summary of all the answers I've got is something like this. They're long, they're complex, they're hard to understand, and even formal, cold, and threatening as well. When instead, they really should be useful, meaningful, usable, and may I say even delightful for the people who are really meant to use them. Let me talk of a few case studies where I and my team helped turn these dull and drab, long and cold contracts into user-friendly documents. We were engaged by a rooftop solar power company. Imagine you have a rooftop. This company would come install these solar power plants on your roof for free for 20 years. And the power generated would be sold back to you, but at a much lower than market rate. Quite a no-brainer for anyone with a roof, which is lying idle. But the sales were painfully slow. And what the company figured was that the 100-page contract that the company would hand over to its customers would simply overwhelm these people. Wouldn't you be overwhelmed if you had to wade through 100 pages of fine print to sign away your rooftop to a company you do not know for 20 long years? Especially when the contract looks like this. Page 2, 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it goes on and on and on. So we put together a legal team, and more importantly, we onboarded a visual designer. And then we started to tinker with this document. This is what we came up with. The new agreement. The key terms pop out so that you don't have to search for these things in the paper. We started using tables to organize the information better. did away with all the long paragraphs, and we started experimenting with formats to ensure that the information is very simply put out for the end user. Now, two things happened as a result. One, the customers of the company were a lot more receptive to these contracts. They understood the terms better. And when you understand, you trust the other party much more. And in business, trust is all important. When you trust more, you do more business. But the other thing, we ended up solving a problem we did not know we were solving for. The sales personnel of this company told us much later that since now even they understood the contract much better, they could answer customer queries more easily. They were way more effective at the sales process. Another instance where the problem was not really the understandability or the comprehension of the contract. The problem was that the end user of the contract could not read or write. This was a cold storage operator. The company would buy premium fruits from farmers all over the country, and they would warehouse these fruits in cold storage facilities to ensure their availability throughout the year. The problem, the farmers who this company used to enter into contracts with, and these were high value contracts, but the farmers could not read or write for the most part. So that meant that entering into written contracts with them was really pointless. What would you do? We came up with an audio contract. So the terms of the contract were narrated by a company representative in Hindi or a regional language understood by the farmers, right? And then the farmer would listen to this and say, I understand and I agree. And this was all on record. The reason I put this picture in the background is to remind you that contracts for centuries have been documents by lawyers for lawyers, when they really should be documents for the end user. You cannot ignore this man in the picture because this is the person who's going to sign it, be bound by it, and you got to design your product, the contract, for this person. Now, many lawyers are likely going to resist this idea, and I know people ask me this question all the time. Are these contracts, the audio contracts, the simple plain English contracts, are they going to hold up in the court? And my answer is yes, they will if they are done right. Let me talk of a large global company which did this well, and maybe that gives you some comfort. General Electric, a name you're all very familiar with. GE Aviation's digital services unit was struggling to close deals. They used to sell this one particular service, which required a suite of 7 contracts. 7 contracts running into 250 pages. The parties to the contract would scratch their head, spend months debating archaic contract language. Sean Burton, the company's new legal head, took this challenge upon himself with this simple mission in his mind. I will super simplify this contract, but not compromise on GE's interest. And to do that, he put together a team of lawyers, literally locked them up in a room, spent months at this. They took a very super simple document to a law firm that they engaged, Weil Gotshal, a leading US law firm, to poke holes in this document. And they figured the gaps, they went back to address them. And ultimately, this was the outcome. 7 contracts, 250 pages, down to a single contract of 7 pages. So it is possible. This is an example of a clause they worked on. Now, before I part, I'm going to leave you with a benchmark to gauge what makes a contract good. What is a good contract, right? And I'm going to pose this benchmark as a question to you. When you sit in front of a contract, ask yourself this. Will this contract be read and understood by a 13-year-old? If you believe this is a good starting point and you want to raise the threshold, raise the bar and do better, then ask, can this contract delight a 13-year-old? Can we get from our judge of 1596, who was frowning and fuming and jumping with anger, to this? Can we get this expression on the faces of people who read and use these contracts? Let me give you an example. You remember the iTunes contract that Kyle from South Park tripped over? Could we redesign, redraw, re-engineer that iTunes contract to something that Kyle would have actually read with pleasure, with this expression on his face? Could we do this to the iTunes contract? A contract in the form of a comic strip or any other format that would work in a given situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to reimagine contracts. Give them what shape you may, what form you wish, that would convey the message simply and beautifully. Put the focus back on the user and turn drab and dull into delightful, user-friendly documents. Because it is your right to understand what is in the document. It is your right to be explained what is in the document before you put pen to paper and bind yourself. I urge you to reclaim that right. Reimagine contracts. Thank you.